This is a download from BFM 89.9, the business station.
So it's one of the hardest things to do, to stand on stage in front of a crowd and speak, whether to 5 people, 500 or even 5,000.
Your heart's beating, palms sweating, and everyone is looking at you. It's hard to breathe and you feel like you're going to choke.
Has anyone ever died from stage fright or public speaking?
No. In fact, a lot of people who came to me and said that they were very scared and they're so nervous and they're so fearful to be on stage, most of them end up doing very well.
So today on the show, we're going to talk about finding your voice. I'm Shifa Situ, joined today by Ling Lo, who's the editor of Postcode.my.
Postcode is an online magazine of city life. We hear and tell people's stories every day. But with so much noise in the city, it can be hard to be heard.
So coming up in the next half hour, we're going to hear from 3 people who each in their own way have found their voice in the city. We're going to hear from a Toastmaster who realizes that he's putting his own audience to sleep.
Some have got fears that many eyes are staring back at them. The fact that we are fearful of many eyes staring back at us at stage actually comes from the caveman days. It is a threat. In the caveman days, if there are 100 people looking at you, they
minds to
probably want to
function
kill you.
in a modern day setting. This is I Love KL on BFM 89.9.
BFM 89.9, this is I Love KL and I'm Ling Lo, here with Shifa Situ. There's something about speaking to a sea of strangers that triggers our deepest fears. Robert Ram is a member of the Toastmasters, a global group who specialize in public speaking. Asif Azuddin picks up a few tips on how to be more confident in front of a crowd.
Perhaps you can tell me a bit about how you got into public speaking.
I actually got into public speaking by accident. I was a real estate trainer prior to that, with no experience at all in presentation skills. I was very competent in the technical aspect of my profession. And after doing many presentations over the years, I felt that my audience were like falling asleep. They were like disinterested in what I was doing. Then it dawned upon me that I need to make it more exciting for them to continue listening to me. And my search went on and I discovered Toastmasters.
I understand that you joined the Toastmasters in 2008. How has your journey changed since then?
When I decided to join a particular club, I had absolutely no idea how it's going to end up. I just kind of liked the environment. Frankly speaking, I liked the president's face, so I decided to join the club. And I found that I kind of enjoy these public speaking things, going on stage and delivering speeches. It was exciting, and the people were so supportive and they kept encouraging me. Now that I look back 5 years later, wow, I've achieved a lot without even realizing that I'm going to go so far.
Mr. Ram, to an extent, most people have fears of going on stage.
Oh, yes. Therefore, I would suggest to our audience listening out there, if they feel fearful of looking into many eyes, speak to one person at a time. As you speak to one person at a time, it makes no difference whether you are speaking to 100 people or 1 million people, because you are speaking to one person at a time, just like how you are having a conversation in the coffee shop where you speak to one friend at a time.
Well, Mr. Ram, I used to be a debater, and I felt that I went into debating initially with a fear of going on stage. But once I was on stage, there was a thrill and exhilaration of giving the speech.
That.
Yes.
Frankly speaking, until today, I still feel nervous. My stomach will churn, my head will spin, and so on and so forth. But I've realized that the only way to keep these fears under control, the fears will never go away, trust me. But the way to keep these fears under control is to come fully prepared for your speech, which means doing a lot of rehearsal and knowing exactly what you're going to talk about before talking about it. That will help to minimize the fears. The other way to minimize the fears is to arrive early, make friends with the guests, and bear in mind, the more friends you have, then you'll find yourself at ease. So these are the 2 tips that I can give you, which is prepare thoroughly for your speeches and befriend the audience in advance.
I find it interesting when you talk about personal stories. And I also understand that you recently won the Open University Toastmaster Club Humorous Speech and Inversion Contest. Well, that's a mouthful. Basically, it's humor that you have to present towards a crowd. And I understand that humor is more or less spontaneous. How do you prepare for humor?
Very good question you ask. Every year when I encourage my Toastmaster members to prepare for humorous speech, and they will come and tell me, I'm not a humorous person. I don't know how to tell jokes. Well, here's the secret, ladies and gentlemen. In a humorous speech, there are 4 basic elements. If you can put these 4 basic elements in your speech, my God, you will make people laughing. Remember, humor is not about jokes. It is about telling a true story, using some exaggeration, some white lies, and stretching the truth. So the 4 elements that I'm talking about is number 1, use irony in your speech. The second technique is to use some understatements. The third one is to use some unexpected twist in your speech. And the last technique is to incorporate some puns in your speech.
Okay, but what happens in the case where you are meant to give an impromptu speech? How about cases like that?
Okay, this interview is an impromptu one as well.
That's the whole point, right? I'm testing you.
Yes. Good point. There are certain techniques that we can use to handle an impromptu speech. Bear in mind, almost every job interview is an impromptu speech as well. So for the audience out there who are going out for their next job interview, remember that itself is an impromptu speech. The important thing is when the topic is thrown at me, what I will do is I will repeat the subject one more time. By repeating the topic one more time, I am able to buy some time and clarify my thoughts. Now, once I repeated the topic, I look for keywords in the topic. For example, let's say the question is, what do you think of the rubbish collection system in Petaling Jaya? So in that sentence, the keywords are probably rubbish collection, Petaling Jaya. So once I pick up those keywords, then I start to speak. The important thing is, in an impromptu speech, the first thing is to state your point. What is your point? And then state a reason. Why do you feel that this is so? The third step is to give an example, a personal story in relation to the reason. And finally, state your point one more time. So it goes like this. You just remember the acronym PREP. Point, reason, example, point. And you will be very safe. Trust me.
All right, thank you for listening to this week's episode of I Love KL. You can always let us know what you think about public speaking or anything else for that matter. You can tweet us at BFM Radio, or you can send us an email to feedback@bfm.my.
Find more stories of city, culture and community on postcode.my. That's www.postcode.my. Have a good weekend and tune in again next week for another episode of I Love KL on BFM 89.9.
On a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair, warm smell of colitas rising up through the air. Up ahead in the distance, I saw a shimmering light. My head grew heavy and my sight grew dim. I had to stop for the night.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To find more great interviews, go to bfm.my or find us on iTunes. BFM 89.9, the business station.